He arrived at the view expecting sympathy. He expected nods, soft agreement, perhaps even reassurance wrapped in daytime warmth. He expected understanding. What Prince Harry did not expect was Joy Behar. By the time he pushed his chair back from the table, one thing had become unmistakably clear. This conversation was never going to end politely. The studio itself offered no warning. Everything looked calm, almost soothing. Warm lights bathed the familiar round table in a gentle glow. White ceramic mugs sat evenly spaced in front of each host, steam rising faintly, more symbolic than functional. Behind them, the backdrop displayed a serene park scene, golden trees, a stone archway, winter sunlight filtering through bare branches in a way that felt intentionally forgiving. It was the kind of set designed to lower defenses, to signal safety before the questions began. Prince Harry sat upright in his chair, posture composed, navy blazer tailored perfectly to his frame. His white shirt was open at the collar, no tie, an intentional balance between formality and approachability. His hands rested lightly on the tabletop, fingers interlaced, body language suggesting calm control, at least on the surface. Across from him, Joy Behar angled her body slightly in his direction. Her cue cards lay beside her mug, untouched for the moment. Her expression was neutral but alert, neither welcoming nor confrontational. It was the look of someone who had spent decades in live television. Someone who could sense when a conversation might veer off script. The red camera light blinked on. Joy smiled toward the audience. "Welcome back," she said smoothly. "Today we're joined by Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex." Harry nodded once. "Thank you for having me." Polite, clean, predictable for now. Joy folded her hands. "You've been living in the United States for several years now. California, 2 kids. A very different life from the one you grew up in." Harry smiled faintly. "Yes. And how does that feel?" Joy asked. "Being away from the institution, the expectations, the press." It was a generous question, almost an invitation. Harry leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose before answering. "I think people obsess over that contrast too much," he said. "It's not about where I am. It's about being free to live authentically." Joy nodded. "Of course. But for a lot of people watching, it is a dramatic shift. Palace to privacy." Harry's smile tightened. "Privacy is a funny word," he said. "People use it like we vanished into the woods. We didn't. We just stopped playing a role." Joy raised an eyebrow. "A role?" Harry replied. "A role written long before I had any say in it." The table fell quiet, not awkwardly but deliberately. Joy didn't interrupt. She didn't challenge him. She let the silence stretch just long enough to register. "Well," she said at last, "many would argue that role came with a great deal of privilege." Harry's jaw flexed. "Privilege doesn't cancel trauma." He shot back quickly, too quickly. "That's a lazy narrative." Joy didn't flinch. "I didn't say it did." Harry shifted in his chair, his hands separated now, one palm flattening against the table, still controlled, but no longer casual. "I just think," he continued, "there's a tendency, especially in media like this, to simplify complex experiences." Joy smiled politely. "This is media like this," she said, "which is why we ask questions." A light chuckle rippled through the audience. Harry didn't join it. Joy glanced down at her notes. "You've spoken openly about the press, about feeling targeted. But some critics say stepping away from royal life didn't reduce attention, it amplified it." Harry's eyes hardened. "Well, critics say a lot of things," he replied. "That doesn't make them insightful." Joy leaned back slightly, studying him. "True. But they also say you've built a public identity around criticizing the institution that made you famous." There it was. Not an attack, not an accusation, a frame. Harry inhaled, then smiled, a thin, practiced expression. "That's a very American way of looking at it," he said. "Fame isn't something I asked for. I was born into it." Joy nodded slowly, absorbing the answer without endorsing it. The room felt tighter now, the warmth of the lights doing little to soften the edge beneath the conversation. This was no longer about comfort. It was about control, who held the narrative, and who was prepared to defend it. And for the first time since the cameras rolled, Prince Harry looked less like a guest being understood, and more like a man realizing that sympathy, once expected, would have to be earned. So was William. The name landed with weight. It didn't echo, but it settled, heavy and undeniable, right in the center of the table. Whatever ease had lingered in Prince Harry's expression disappeared instantly. His smile collapsed, replaced by something harder, more guarded. "I'm not here to compare myself to my brother," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut through the studio air. Joy Behar tilted her head slightly, studying him. You talk about him a lot for someone who doesn't want comparisons. A low murmur rippled through the audience, the collective intake of breath that follows a line everyone knows has landed. Harry straightened in his chair, shoulders squaring as if instinctively bracing. With respect, I think that's a bit unfair. Joy met his gaze without flinching. Then explain it. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. A fraction of a second where calculation overtook instinct. Harry glanced down briefly, then back up, choosing his words with visible care. When one person is protected by the system, he said, and another is sacrificed by it, comparison becomes unavoidable. Joy's expression didn't change, but her voice did. That's a strong word? Harry nodded once. It's an accurate one. The warmth in the room evaporated. The lighting remained soft, the set unchanged, but the atmosphere had shifted. Joy lifted her mug, took a measured sip, then placed it back on the table with deliberate calm. Prince Harry, she said evenly. We're only 10 minutes in. Harry looked at her, irritation flickering openly now. And already, Joy continued, you sound less like a guest and more like someone bracing for a fight. His eyes narrowed. Maybe that says more about the questions than my answers. Joy smiled, but this time there was no warmth behind it. Or, she said, it says you came in expecting everyone at this table to agree with you. The studio went silent, not the comfortable silence of television pacing, but the kind that signals a line has been crossed. Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms tightly across his chest. Whatever politeness had opened the interview was gone, stripped away in plain sight. The quiet that followed Joy's statement didn't feel accidental. It felt deliberate. Whoopi Goldberg shifted slightly in her seat, sensing the moment. Sunny Hostin glanced down at her notes, then back up, her expression sharpened with focus. Sarah Haynes folded her hands together, already preparing to soften the exchange if necessary. Harry, however, remained still, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes locked on Joy. Joy broke the pause first. I'm not saying disagreement is a problem, she said calmly. But you seem irritated that not everyone shares your framing. Harry exhaled sharply through his nose. What irritates me, he replied, is being spoken to as if my life is a debate topic rather than a lived experience. Sunny leaned in slightly, her voice gentle but firm. But when you come on a show like this, she said, discussion is part of the deal. Harry turned toward her, but his response was still aimed squarely at Joy. Discussion is fine, he said. Interrogation masked as curiosity is not. Joy raised an eyebrow. Interrogation. Yes, Harry said, his voice tightening. There's a tone, a pattern, and I recognize it. Sarah jumped in quickly. I think what Joy is trying to? Joy lifted a hand, stopping her mid-sentence without looking away from Harry. No, she said quietly. Let me handle this. That alone shifted the room. Harry uncrossed his arms, leaning forward now, his posture more confrontational than defensive. Handle what exactly? Joy met his gaze unblinking. The assumption that any question you don't like is hostile. A few audience members murmured in agreement. Harry let out a short, humorless laugh. That's not what I said, Joy replied. Every time you bristle. Whoopi cleared her throat. Okay, she said, firmly but kindly. Let's all take a breath. We're not here to attack anyone. Harry nodded toward her. I appreciate that. Joy did not nod. Whoopi continued. Harry, people watching are trying to understand your perspective, not invalidate it. Harry's voice dropped, losing volume but gaining intensity. Then maybe they should listen instead of challenging every sentence. Joy leaned back in her chair. Listening doesn't mean agreeing. Harry's eyes flashed, and challenging doesn't mean understanding. The tension thickened, not loud, not chaotic, but heavy. It pressed down on the table, the lights, the careful smiles. This was no longer a friendly interview, or even a spirited debate. It was a standoff between narrative and scrutiny, between a man demanding to be heard and a panel refusing to surrender the right to question. And as the seconds stretched, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This conversation was no longer about royal life or family or even the past. It was about control, and neither side was willing to let go. Sunny stepped in again, sensing the moment slipping further off balance. Can I ask something? She said carefully. You've talked about trauma, about being harmed by systems, but many would argue that public accountability isn't the same thing as a personal attack. Harry turned toward her, frustration written plainly across his face. That distinction is convenient, he replied, for people who've never lived under that level of scrutiny. Joy cut in immediately. You're assuming none of us have. Harry looked back at her, his expression hardening. And you're assuming it's comparable. A soft gasp rippled through the audience. Joy didn't raise her voice. She didn't shift in her chair, but her smile vanished entirely. You know, she said slowly, I've interviewed politicians who lost elections, actors whose careers collapsed overnight, parents who buried children. None of them spoke to this table like it owed them reverence. Harry stiffened. I'm not asking for reverence. Then stop demanding it with your tone. Joy replied without hesitation. Sarah leaned forward urgently. Okay, let's reset. But Harry was already shaking his head. This is exactly the problem, he said. I come here to explain my experience, and instead I'm lectured on how I'm allowed to express it. Joy's voice hardened just a notch. No, you're being reminded that expression doesn't excuse condescension. Harry laughed, sharper this time, edged with disbelief. Yes, Joy said plainly. From you. The room went dead quiet. Even Whoopi didn't interrupt. Harry stared at Joy as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. That's rich, he said. Joy folded her hands calmly. You speak as though anyone who questions you is either uninformed or malicious. That's condescension. Harry leaned forward now, both palms flat on the table. Because they are? Shock rippled visibly through the audience. Sonny whispered his name. Harry. He didn't look at her. They reduce my family to headlines. He continued. They mock my wife. They minimize what we went through. And then they sit here pretending neutrality. Joy's eyes narrowed. We are not the tabloids. You benefit from the same ecosystem. Harry snapped. That did it. Joy leaned forward for the first time, her voice low but unmistakably firm. Don't lump us in with the people you claim to despise, she said. We're sitting across from you. We invited you here. And you're talking down to us. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice steady and authoritative. Harry, you need to hear this. This table isn't against you. Harry turned to her. Then why does it feel like a trial? Joy answered before Whoopi could. Because you walked in defensive, she said. And when people are defensive, every question feels like an attack. Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms again, tighter this time, his posture closed and rigid. So this is my fault, Lee. Joy nodded once. At least partly. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Sarah looked visibly uncomfortable. Sonny stared straight ahead, lips pressed together. Whoopi rubbed her temples slowly. The room felt smaller now, heavier. Harry's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. You have no idea what you're talking about. Joy didn't blink. And you? She replied. No idea how arrogant you sound. The audience erupted, not with applause or boos, but with a sharp, collective intake of breath. Harry's face flushed, the color rising fast beneath the studio lights. Whatever remained of the polite interview had fully collapsed, and everyone knew it. The room didn't recover after Joy's last sentence. It couldn't. Harry sat frozen for a moment, arms crossed so tightly his shoulders looked locked in place. His jaw worked as if grinding something invisible between his teeth. For the first time since the interview began, he wasn't just irritated, he was angry. Whoopi leaned forward, palms open in a calming gesture. Harry, she said carefully. But the damage had already been done. This was no longer a discussion about trauma or media or public life. It had become a confrontation over power. Who was allowed to challenge whom, and who believed themselves above that challenge. And as the cameras continued to roll, it was painfully clear no amount of soft lighting or careful moderation could put this moment back together. Nobody here is denying that you've been through a lot, Whoopi said carefully. But this conversation is sliding into something else. Harry didn't look at her. His gaze was fixed on Joy, unblinking. You keep calling it arrogance, he said slowly, his voice controlled but edged with steel. What you're really uncomfortable with is a man refusing to apologize for surviving. Joy tilted her head slightly. No, she replied. What I'm uncomfortable with is a guest who treats every pushback like betrayal. Sonny tried to step in, her voice gentle. Harry, can I ask? No, Harry cut in sharply. Actually, you can't. The audience reacted audibly. Sonny blinked, stunned. Excuse me, she said. I've answered enough questions, Harry continued, and every single one gets twisted into another accusation. Joy leaned back in her chair. You're on The View, not a press conference. Harry scoffed. That's debatable. Whoopi's voice dropped firm and unmistakable. All right, let's slow this down. Harry finally turned to her. With respect, Whoopi, slowing it down just drags this out. Joy interjected immediately. Then maybe you shouldn't have come. The words landed hard. Harry's eyes snapped back to her. You don't get to say that. Joy's tone remained calm. I absolutely do. Sarah tried one last time to soften the moment. Maybe what Harry is saying is... Harry cut her off as well. Please stop trying to translate me. I'm perfectly capable of speaking for myself. Sarah fell silent, lips pressed tightly together. The audience could feel it now. Harry wasn't reacting anymore. He was lashing out. Joy folded her hands unshaken. You know, she said evenly, I've been doing this a long time, and when someone keeps telling everyone else to stop talking, it usually means they don't like hearing anything they can't control. Harry let out a short, bitter laugh, coming from this table. Yes, Joy replied without hesitation, because you walked in wanting a platform, not a conversation. Harry leaned forward suddenly. You invited me? And you accepted, Joy said. That doesn't make this your living room. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Harry shook his head, his voice rising. This is unbelievable. You pretend to care about mental health, about trauma, about empathy, and the moment someone doesn't perform gratitude the right way, you turn on them. That's not fair, Whoopi said, straightening. Harry rounded on her, eyes blazing. Then stop letting her speak for all of you. Joy didn't look at Whoopi. I'm speaking for myself, she said. And I'm saying this, you don't get to weaponize pain to shut down disagreement. The word weaponize cut deep. Harry's face reddened. You have no right. Joy leaned forward now, matching his intensity. I have every right. You came on this show. You brought the attitude. And now you're acting offended because someone isn't nodding along. Harry rose halfway out of his chair before catching himself. The sudden movement sent a visible jolt through the studio. Whoopi raised her voice for the first time. Harry, sit down. He hesitated, then dropped back into his chair hard. You know what the problem is, Harry said coldly. You don't actually want honesty, you want compliance. Joy's smile returned thin and sharp. And you, she replied, want sympathy without scrutiny. Silence, pure, heavy silence. Sunny looked visibly uncomfortable. Sarah stared down at the table. Even the producers behind the cameras had stopped pretending this was manageable. Harry exhaled sharply. I'm done being psychoanalyzed by daytime television. Joy didn't miss a beat. Then you're on the wrong show. The words echoed. Harry's eyes flicked toward the exit just for a second. The thought was there now. Leaving. Harry, if you need a moment? No, he snapped. What I need is respect. Joy nodded slowly. Respect is mutual. Harry stood up fully this time. The audience gasped. He looked down at the table, at the mugs, the notes, the carefully arranged set meant to feel safe. Then he looked back at Joy. This, he said, his voice tight, is exactly why people don't trust media anymore. Joy remained seated, calm and unwavering. No, she replied. This is why people are tired of entitlement dressed up as enlightenment. That was the line. The one that shattered whatever restraint Harry had left. His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stepped back. He shook his head once, lips pressed thin, eyes burning. You know what? He said, voice trembling with fury. You? And for the first time since the interview began, there was no interruption, no moderator stepping in, no attempt to smooth the moment over. Everyone waited, because whatever came next was no longer television. It was fallout. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who's made a career out of mocking people, Harry said, his voice shaking with restrained fury. Joy looked up at him, unafraid. And I'm not going to sit here and let you belittle everyone in this room. Whoopi rose halfway out of her chair. Okay, she said firmly. This is getting out of hand. Harry reached behind him and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. The cameras were still rolling. No one pretended otherwise. Everyone in the studio understood the stakes now. Either he would walk out, or someone would stop him. And whatever happened next would define the moment. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Harry stood beside his chair, jacket clenched in one hand, chest rising and falling too quickly to hide. His eyes darted from Joy to Whoopi, then briefly toward the audience. Millions of unseen faces watching every second of this unraveling confrontation. Joy Behar didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't interrupt. She waited. That silence alone said more than shouting ever could. Harry, Whoopi said, now standing fully, her tone unmistakably authoritative. Sit down. We're going to reset this. No. I'm not staying here to be disrespected. Joy finally spoke, her voice calm but razor sharp. Then let's be clear about something, she said. You weren't disrespected, you were challenged, and you didn't like it. Harry laughed bitterly. This is a setup. No, Joy replied evenly. This is accountability. The word hit hard. You don't get to decide how people respond to you. Joy continued. You don't get to control the tone, the questions, or the room. And you definitely don't get to shut people down when they disagree. Harry pointed at her. You've been antagonizing me from the start. Joy nodded once. Because you walked in defensive, condescending, and unwilling to listen. I met you where you were. Whoopi stepped forward. Enough, she said. This isn't helping anyone. Harry turned toward her. With respect, Whoopi, this show invited me. I didn't come here to be attacked. Whoopi's expression hardened. And we didn't invite you to insult the panel. The audience murmured loudly now. The tension was no longer subtle or contained. It was public, undeniable. Sunny spoke carefully. Harry, I think what Joy is saying. No. Harry snapped again. I'm done being talked over. That was it. Whoopi straightened fully, her voice dropping into something colder, more official. This is the view, she said. We have conversations here. We don't silence each other. Harry stared at her, disbelief flashing across his face. Then maybe this isn't the place for me. Joy leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on his. No, she said. It isn't. The words landed heavy. For a moment, Harry looked stunned, as if he hadn't expected that answer. You're asking me to leave, he said. Joy didn't hesitate. Yes. The studio went dead silent. Whoopi exhaled slowly. I agree. Gasps rippled through the audience. Harry's face flushed red. You're kicking me off the show. Whoopi met his gaze, calm and firm. You've crossed a line. This conversation isn't productive anymore. Harry scoffed. Unbelievable? Joy folded her hands. What's unbelievable is the way you've spoken to everyone at this table. Harry gripped his jacket fully now. This is exactly why people don't trust media. Joy stood for the first time. And this, she said evenly, is why people are tired of entitlement masquerading as truth. Harry opened his mouth to respond, but Whoopi cut in immediately. We're done, she said clearly. Thank you for coming. Harry looked around the table one last time, searching for an alley. There were none. Sunny avoided his gaze. Sarah stared down at the desk. The audience waited in breathless silence. Without another word, Harry turned and walked off set. The camera stayed on Joy and Whoopi as his footsteps echoed away down the corridor. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Whoopi turned to the camera. She said calmly, difficult conversations reveal more than answers ever could. Joy nodded beside her. Respect goes both ways. The screen faded as the audience sat stunned, fully aware they had just witnessed a moment that would be replayed, debated, and dissected for weeks to come. Prince Harry hadn't just walked off the view. He'd been shown the door.